Hey and welcome to this video. I'm so excited you're here. Today we are going to talk about our kind of recent equipment purchase, which is the Red Komodo X, and why we did it. For a while we have been looking around the camera market and kind of thinking, okay, what is going to be the next best step in terms of upgrading our camera? And we have been shooting on a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera 6K before. That is what we shot our very first two feature films on. But we felt really limited, and also that camera has been getting pretty old by now. So we thought, okay, we have to upgrade. We need something that is just more versatile, that we can rig out bigger and, it's just better. And we have been looking at all sorts of different cameras, from a Sony FX9 to a Canon C400, a Blackmagic Pixis, the Red Komodo X or Red Komodo. I really kind of want to focus on the Blackmagic Pixis and the Canon C400, which have been both released in the last couple months. Well, Blackmagic Pixis probably over a year now, but those cameras are kind of recent, and many people just compare it to the Red Komodo X, which is kind of valid, but they're also completely different cameras and made for different things. So why did we choose the Komodo? The first element is just the image quality and the color science. Red has a very specific look that is widely used in high-end productions. The Red Komodo X delivers about 16.5 stops of dynamic range, which means it's just incredibly detailed in shadow and highlight areas. The Red RAW workflow gives a ton of flexibility in post, and it just allows us to push the image really far. In the work that we do, which is mostly narrative, that is kind of a very big thing, because we want to be able to color grade or color correct if we mess something up, but then also color grade to build a certain world around our story, or even maybe push it into a certain time of day or something like that, where we can just push those colors really far before just cracking it, losing the details. And Red RAW I think it's 16-bit of color information, which is crazy. I mean, considering to the Sony cameras I'm shooting on right now, which is 10-bit. 10-bit is already a whole lot for small cameras like that. And then I think the Blackmagic had 12 or 14-bit. I'm not exactly sure. But yeah, Red just gives it even more information. The next kind of big thing for us is global shutter. And that's for us a huge deal, especially, because we shoot a lot of fast-moving subjects and handheld footage. Global shutter just eliminates rolling shutter artifacts. The Pixis and the C400 both use rolling shutters, which will introduce just, distortions when having a faster moving object. And I'm not exactly sure how good or bad that rolling shutter of those two cameras is. I've heard the Pixis is kind of bad, especially when doing slow-mo stuff, but I do not have had any hands-on experience on those two cameras. But we are planning on filming a sports film and a military drama pretty soon. And then we thought having a global shutter is just going to make all the difference. Military drama is going to be a lot of, effects that we have to introduce, and just handheld footage, running with the camera, stuff like that. We're just going to have a lot going on. And obviously a sports film, talks for itself, right? And then both of those films would require, as I said, a lot of VFX work. And then a global shutter with no artifacts will just mean that it's just easier for our VFX team to get that right. We're not exactly sure if we're gonna do that or not, but we might actually shoot parts of the films in a virtual set. And then a global shutter is just going to be better. Also, last year we shot a documentary about a UFC fighter. And I really started seeing that rolling shutter quite a bit, and it influenced the look and feel of the final product quite significantly. I was just handheld shooting pretty much the entire time when they were fighting. I was in that octagon with them, and yeah. All right, the next thing is size and build quality. The Komodo X is really compact. Like, it looks big right now, but the main camera is just this little cube right here. And it's built really well. And because it's so small, it just fits all gimbal setups and drones and run and gun rigs, which just enables us to have a lot of creative freedom. The Blackmagic Pixis, yes, it's not big, but it's bigger than this. But then also, it's not built as solidly, so I wouldn't trust it as much. And in order to make it properly work, I feel like you have to rig it out a little more than the Blackmagic Pixis. Oh wait, you just have to rig it out a little more than the Red Komodo. The C400, on the other hand, is a great documentary style shooting camera, I feel like. It's kind of larger, because it's made to be more versatile in different situations. It has internal NDs and great autofocus system and just a whole lot of more buttons and stuff like that. Which, yes, it's great for documentary style shooting where you have to access everything real quick. Maybe you have even gloves on and stuff like that, right? If you're out and shooting in the Arctic winter. And the Red can be rigged out for all big productions, right? We can add a matte box to it, which we have, and then we have a wireless video transmitter and obviously all the handles and monitors that we need. But we can also strip it down to be really tiny. It's just this little white cube right here. And as I mentioned before, that enables us to have so much more creative freedom. In our next project, it's going to be a feature comedy. And what we really want to do on that project is just going to get a whole lot of creative angles. That means overhead shots, or a first-person view, or a body rig, or something like that. And having a tiny camera like that where you can just put a little lens on, take off the big monitors and side handles and everything that you don't need, the rails, you're left off with a really, really small setup that you can just put everywhere. Another thing that we just think is great on this camera is the Red RAW and the codec of it and its workflow. The Red Code RAW is one of the best compressed RAW formats that is available, balancing image quality and file size really effectively. The Pixis uses Blackmagic RAW, which is great, we've used it a lot, but not as universally accepted in high-end post-production. And the C400, for example, uses the Canon Light RAW, but it's not light, it's a pretty heavy codec, and it doesn't give you the amount of flexibility that we have on Red. And I mean, Red, they have the patent on RAW, so I mean, they probably know what they're doing, right? Okay, autofocus. The Canon C400 obviously has the edge with its dual pixel autofocus system. But we mostly shoot in controlled environments with manual focus, with big cine lenses, so that really wasn't a deciding factor for us. The Komodo X does actually have the face detect autofocus, which is a pretty big improvement from the original Komodo. And they keep updating the system like you do, like every now and then they have a firmware update, and after it just works even better, that autofocus system. And I've tried it and it works pretty well, although it is adapted. So yeah, really interesting. Price-wise, the Komodo X sits somewhere in between the Pixis and the C400, closer to the C400. But for us, the extra investment was worth it to invest into the extra image quality, the global shutter, and the Red ecosystem. So in the end, the Komodo X really was the best fit for us and our workflow and the kinds of work that we are doing with narrative indie work. The flexibility that we get out of it and the workflow just aligns with our professional productions. All right, before I wrap up this video though, there is one more thing, one more element why we went with the Komodo X and not another system. And this is not a main reason, it's just a little feeling, a little thing that just helped us take this extra investment. And that is, it's a Red. Yes, it's a brand. It's a name that we have obviously throughout our entire career looked up to. Red and Ari were always the, big name brands. People who shot on a Red have always been, the big productions, the big filmmakers. So I think that is something worth mentioning. We're just super proud. When we opened that box and saw the Red logo and stuff like that, we were proud to be owning a Red now. All right, if you're considering one of these cameras, let me know in the comments. And which way are you leaning and why? If you want to see more real-world tests with the Komodo X, make sure to subscribe because we've got some exciting content coming up. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.